The sun had just started to rise, spilling a soft golden light across the enormous house. It was the kind of house most people only saw in magazines, with marble floors that shone, tall windows that let in streams of light, and rooms that seemed endless. Yet despite the grandeur, there was a quiet that felt almost heavy. The millionaire who owned the house, a man used to managing businesses worth millions and making decisions that affected hundreds of lives, felt a strange emptiness inside. He had everything he could wish for in the world, yet something important seemed missing. His daughter was the reason for this emptiness. She was a little girl, full of curiosity in her own way. But her world was very different from that of other children. She had been diagnosed with autism at a young age, and while she could see and hear everything around her, connecting with people and expressing herself had always been a challenge. The father tried his best, bringing her toys, books, and the latest technology, hoping to spark her interest or engage her in play. But often, he found her quietly sitting in a corner, drawing shapes, humming softly, or repeating a word over and over again. He watched from a distance, hoping for a sign that she was happy, that she felt understood. Life in the mansion moved on with its usual rhythm. There were staff members who managed the household, cooks who prepared elaborate meals, and a maid who seemed to disappear into the background most of the time. The father barely noticed her except for routine greetings. She worked silently, always efficient, always present, yet never intrusive. He never imagined she would become central to the most important discovery of his life. One morning, he decided to check on his daughter before heading to work. It was not unusual for him to peek in, mostly out of habit. But that day, something different caught his attention. As he walked down the long hallway, he heard voices coming from his daughter's playroom. He stopped in his tracks, puzzled. One voice was unmistakably familiar. It was his daughter, babbling and repeating words. The other voice was soft but clear, guiding her gently, patiently. What shocked him was that she was repeating words in a language he did not recognize. Then came another word and another in a different language. It was happening fast, almost too fast for him to believe. He counted silently, realizing that she was learning not one, not two, but 9 different languages. He stepped closer, his heart pounding. Could it be true? The maid, someone he had barely paid attention to, was sitting on the floor with his daughter, teaching her words, phrases, even short sentences in 9 languages. Each word was said slowly, clearly, and she encouraged his daughter to repeat after her. She used toys, flashcards, songs, and even simple gestures, turning the lesson into something playful and engaging. The father was stunned. He had never seen anything like this. He watched silently, barely breathing, as his daughter responded eagerly, her eyes lighting up in ways he had never witnessed before. For a long moment, he simply stood there, unsure of what to do. He felt a mixture of emotions swirling inside him: disbelief, curiosity, awe, and a touch of guilt. How could he, with all his wealth and resources, have missed this? How could he have spent so much time worrying about the right toys or the best gadgets, when the answer to connecting with his daughter was right there in front of him? He noticed something else as he watched. His daughter was laughing softly, a sound so rare and precious that it made his chest tighten. She reached out for a colorful card and repeated a word in a new language. The maid clapped gently and smiled, and the father felt a sudden warmth, a realization that this simple act of teaching, done with patience and love, was opening a door into his daughter's world. The father wanted to interrupt, to ask questions, to understand how she knew so much, but he stayed quiet, hidden just out of sight, as if watching a miracle unfold. He watched as the maid adapted her teaching to match his daughter's pace, never forcing, never showing frustration. Every small success was celebrated, every mistake met with encouragement. The daughter was learning not just words, but confidence, attention, and joy. Hours passed unnoticed. Breakfast had gone cold. The sun had climbed higher in the sky, but he could not move. Every moment revealed more: the maid's gentle voice, the way she used her own hand to guide his daughter's fingers, the smiles they exchanged. It was a world completely different from the one he had known in the boardrooms and meetings. It was simple, human, filled with connection. Eventually, he stepped back, not wanting to intrude any longer. He felt a deep sense of respect and admiration for the maid, feelings he had never expected to have. She was not just a caretaker. She was a teacher, a guide, a bridge to his daughter's happiness. He realized that she had dedicated herself quietly, without recognition or reward, to something truly extraordinary. Later that day, he could not stop thinking about what he had seen. He found himself reflecting on the life he had built for them, on the countless ways he had tried to help his daughter, and on the unexpected source of her progress. He thought about the power of patience, the impact of care, and the importance of seeing potential where others might not. He understood that true wealth was not measured in money or possessions, but in human connection and the ability to nurture it. Evenings in the house were different now. He began paying closer attention, not just to his daughter's words, but to her expressions, her laughter, her curiosity. He started noticing little things, the sparkle in her eyes when she recognized a word, the way she leaned closer to the maid when she understood something new, and the quiet moments when she tried on her own to repeat phrases she had learned. He felt a mixture of awe and humility. In all his life, he had never encountered such dedication, such quiet brilliance. That night, as he sat alone in his study, he replayed the morning over and over in his mind. The sound of the 9 languages, the smiles, the laughter, and the patience, all of it, filled him with a strange warmth. He knew that something important had begun, something that would change not just his daughter's life, but his own understanding of the world. He realized that the maid, someone he had never truly seen before, had become a teacher in the deepest sense, a teacher of knowledge, of care, and of the human heart. Sleep came slowly that night, but his dreams were filled with words in different languages, images of his daughter smiling, and a feeling he had not known in years, a sense of hope, possibility, and connection. He understood, finally, that life could surprise even the richest and most powerful, and that sometimes the greatest treasures were hidden in the most unexpected places. He could hardly wait to see what the next day would bring, knowing that the quiet magic of learning and love had just begun to unfold within the walls of their grand home. After the morning discovery, the millionaire found himself thinking about the maid and his daughter constantly. He could not understand how someone so humble could possess such knowledge, nor how she could teach his daughter in a way that truly reached her. Every day he observed quietly, fascinated by the patience, creativity, and dedication he saw. But along with admiration, there was skepticism. How had she learned 9 languages? Was her teaching method even correct? Could it really help his daughter in the long term? His curiosity grew, and he began to take small steps to observe more closely without disturbing them. He would enter the room slowly, pretending to check on something but really watching how she guided his daughter through exercises. The maid never noticed him. Her focus was complete, and the little girl responded to her with joy and excitement. Sometimes the girl would repeat a phrase in French, then immediately follow it with a sentence in Japanese, her eyes sparkling as if she were sharing a secret. Each time this happened, the father's heart ached with wonder and a touch of envy. He had never seen anyone teach with such patience and understanding. He started asking himself questions he had never considered before. How could he, with all his wealth and access to the best tutors and resources, have missed the simplest truth? Teaching was not about money or titles, it was about connection, understanding, and belief in the learner's ability. The maid had that in abundance, and his daughter responded in kind. The realization struck him hard. His daughter's progress did not need the latest technology or fancy programs. She needed someone who believed in her and had the patience to walk with her, step by step. Despite his admiration, doubt lingered. He had always been a man of logic, and the idea that a maid could educate his daughter so effectively seemed almost impossible. He had spent hours researching autism and learning methods for children with special needs, yet nothing had made such an impact. The maid had no formal education in teaching or therapy, yet here she was, succeeding where experts had struggled. The contrast unsettled him. It challenged his assumptions about intelligence, capability, and the roles people could play. Still, the father could not stop watching. Each day he noticed subtle changes in his daughter. She began using words in context, not just repeating them. She would point at objects, smile when she recognized them in another language, and sometimes even try to teach the maid something she had learned herself. The bond between the two of them grew, and he realized that the education was only part of the magic. The rest was the trust and love that had developed between teacher and student. One evening, curiosity overcame him completely. He decided to speak to the maid directly. She had just finished a lesson, and his daughter was happily arranging colorful cards on the floor. He approached her gently and asked, "Can we talk?" Her eyes flickered up and she nodded, calm but cautious. She was not defensive, only attentive, waiting for him to speak. He asked her how she had learned all these languages and how she knew how to teach his daughter. She smiled softly and began to share her story. She spoke of growing up in a small village, far from opportunities, where she had discovered books and old language guides in her local library. She had a natural curiosity and a love for words that pushed her to learn, one language after another during her free hours. She had also spent time learning about children with special needs, watching videos, reading articles, and experimenting with techniques that made learning fun and engaging. Her voice was steady, her eyes calm, and the father listened, captivated. This was no ordinary maid. This was a person whose dedication and intelligence had been hidden by circumstance. Yet she had nurtured a skill and a heart capable of reaching his daughter in ways he could not. The conversation lingered in his mind long after it ended. He realized how much he had underestimated the value of human talent beyond titles and appearances. He thought about the people he had met in his life, those he had judged by their profession or status, and felt a pang of regret. Here was someone who had quietly created miracles, and he had only now truly seen her. As days passed, he began to participate subtly, joining in lessons in ways that would not disrupt the rhythm. Sometimes he would sit on the edge of the room, repeating a phrase or clapping when his daughter succeeded. Other times he would ask the maid questions about techniques, wanting to understand the approach she used, so he could support her without taking over. He learned about patience, encouragement, repetition, and creativity. The lessons went beyond language. They were lessons in humanity, humility, and the power of belief. The father noticed changes in his own behavior too. He was no longer impatient or frustrated when things did not go as planned. He began to listen more, observe more, and appreciate the small victories. Seeing his daughter respond, smile, and grow gave him a sense of purpose he had not felt in years. He also saw the importance of slowing down, of creating space for connection, of valuing effort over speed and understanding over achievement. There were moments of doubt and fear, of course. He worried about what others would think if they knew a maid was teaching his daughter. He questioned if he should bring in professionals to formalize the lessons, but he realized that doing so might disrupt the delicate bond that had formed. The maid had become more than a teacher. She was a friend, a guide, and a bridge to a world his daughter could now explore safely. One afternoon, as the father watched through the doorway, his daughter tried to say a sentence in Italian. She stumbled slightly, but the maid encouraged her gently, whispering words of support. When she finally succeeded, her face lit up with pride. The father felt tears prick his eyes. He had never seen his daughter express joy so openly. At that moment, he understood the true power of love, patience, and belief. Knowledge alone was not enough. It had to be shared with care and understanding. He began reflecting on his own life. He thought about the hours he had spent focused on business, the meetings, the calls, the deals. He realized that in all that time he had missed what mattered most, being present, connecting, and nurturing. The maid had reminded him, without ever intending to, that true influence came from patience, dedication, and empathy. Money could buy many things, but it could not buy the trust and connection that formed between his daughter and the maid. By the end of the week, he made a quiet decision. He would support this education, not by taking control but by providing resources, encouragement, and recognition. He would ensure that the maid had everything she needed to continue her work, while also stepping into the role of a father who truly saw and valued his child. The shift in perspective was profound. He felt lighter, more alive, and more connected to his daughter than ever before. Evenings became moments of reflection. He would sit in the living room, watching his daughter repeat new words, attempting sentences, and sometimes singing little songs in languages he could barely understand. The sound of laughter, concentration, and discovery filled the rooms. The house, once empty in spirit despite its size and luxury, now resonated with life, joy, and hope. In his solitude, he acknowledged something important. He had learned a lesson more valuable than any business strategy, more important than any investment. Intelligence, dedication, and human connection were treasures beyond measure. The maid had shown him that wealth was not just about money, it was about nurturing potential, believing in others, and creating spaces where people could grow, even in ways that seemed impossible. As night fell and the house grew quiet, he felt a calm certainty that this was just the beginning. He knew that the days ahead would bring new challenges and discoveries, but he was no longer afraid. With the maid's guidance and his own willingness to learn, He could be part of a journey that transformed his daughter's life, and perhaps in the process it would transform him as well. The following days were filled with a new rhythm in the house. The millionaire had decided to watch without interfering too much, and he slowly began participating in small ways, sitting quietly in the corner of the room, clapping, or repeating words when prompted. His daughter began responding more confidently, laughing and pointing at objects as she practiced new languages. The father realized he was witnessing not just education but transformation. It was a process that money, toys, or gadgets could never achieve. It was the result of genuine human connection. The maid noticed his presence and began to involve him subtly. She would ask him to say a word or repeat a phrase, making him part of the experience without overwhelming him. At first he hesitated, feeling unsure and out of place. But as he tried, he saw the joy in his daughter's eyes. She would look at him with a small smile, repeating the word carefully, proud of herself and delighted that he was joining her. He felt warmth spreading inside him, a sense of belonging he had not known for years. One afternoon, the father asked the maid more directly about her teaching methods. She patiently explained how she adapted her approach for his daughter. She spoke of repetition, positive reinforcement, games, songs, and visual aids. She emphasized the importance of patience, celebrating every small success and creating a safe space where the child could explore without fear of failure. She spoke softly, clearly, her hands gesturing as she illustrated examples. The father listened, fascinated by her depth of understanding. Her knowledge was not just academic. It was intuitive, based on observation and empathy. The father realized that he had underestimated the power of instinct and experience. While experts often relied on formal methods and rigid plans, the maid had created a flexible, human-centered approach that responded to his daughter's needs in real time. He could see the results in front of him, his daughter smiling, responding, and engaging more than ever before. It was a lesson he could not learn from books or seminars. It was unfolding in real life before his eyes. He began asking questions, curious about how she had learned so many languages. She shared that it had taken years, self-study, and dedication. She spoke of using books, listening to recordings, practicing with anyone who would help, and always pushing herself to learn more. He was amazed by her perseverance and humility. Here was someone who had overcome obstacles, learned extraordinary skills, and used them not for personal gain but to help a child find her voice. Slowly, a trust developed between them. The father began to rely on her insights, asking for advice not only about language, but about ways to support his daughter emotionally and socially. The maid welcomed his questions, offering guidance without judgment, showing him the subtle ways he could connect with his daughter and help her grow. He realized that her work was not limited to language. It was about nurturing confidence, communication, and self-expression. Meanwhile, his daughter blossomed. She began trying longer sentences, using words from different languages in the same conversation. She pointed to objects, described them, and sometimes corrected herself or the maid, showing awareness and pride. Her eyes shone with excitement as she discovered she could express herself in ways that had been impossible before. The father watched, overwhelmed with emotion, realizing that this simple, patient teaching had unlocked doors he had never imagined. He also observed how the maid adapted lessons creatively. When his daughter seemed distracted or frustrated, she would change the activity, make it playful, or take a short break. She knew when to push and when to let her explore on her own. The father was astonished by her sensitivity and awareness, understanding that learning was as much about mood and trust as it was about words and repetition. Every day brought a small revelation about teaching, connection, and love. Over time, he began to reflect deeply on his own role as a father. He had spent so many years focused on providing material comforts, assuming they would bring happiness and connection. Yet here was proof that what mattered most was presence, attention, and belief. He had to adjust not only his expectations but his behavior. He needed to slow down, to listen, to engage genuinely, and to trust the process. He realized that wealth could facilitate opportunities, but it could not replace dedication, patience, or genuine human connection. The father began participating more actively. He would sit on the floor with his daughter, helping with exercises, repeating phrases, and even learning new words himself. The daughter's laughter filled the room as she taught him words she had mastered, proud of her knowledge and excited to share it. The maid guided them both, her presence a steady anchor, ensuring the sessions were productive yet joyful. It was a dynamic that no textbook could teach. patience, trust, and the interplay of relationships. One day, the father noticed a small breakthrough. His daughter, who had previously struggled to initiate conversation, began speaking to him in short sentences, mixing words from different languages. She looked at him expectantly, waiting for a response. He responded, carefully mirroring her words and tone, and she giggled in delight. He felt a surge of pride and wonder. This was progress he had longed for but had never seen until now. He understood that the connection she had formed with the maid had empowered her to reach out to him in ways he had thought impossible. The maid, noticing the father's astonishment, explained that confidence was as important as language. Children, especially those with autism, needed encouragement, patience, and a safe space to experiment without fear. She emphasized celebrating effort, not just results, and creating a bond that made learning joyful rather than stressful. The father realized that he had learned as much as his daughter in these lessons. He had discovered the true meaning of presence, empathy, and collaboration. Evening times became moments of reflection and bonding. The father would observe his daughter practicing new words or phrases, sometimes joining in, sometimes quietly admiring her progress. He began to recognize the subtle changes in her behavior, her willingness to explore, her excitement in discovering new words, and her growing ability to communicate feelings. Each small achievement was a celebration, a testament to patience, dedication, and love. The father also began to think about the maid differently. He had always seen her as an employee, someone who maintained the household quietly in the background. Now he saw her as a mentor, a guide, and a person of extraordinary skill and character. He felt gratitude and respect he had never felt before. He realized that true talent and dedication often go unnoticed, and that humility does not diminish greatness. This understanding prompted him to consider the broader implications. He began to think about how society values people, often based on status or profession, and how many hidden talents go unrecognized. The maid's work had transformed his daughter's life, and in the process, it had transformed his perspective. He felt a desire to recognize and support talent wherever it might be found, to value dedication and heart over appearances or titles. As days turned into weeks, the father's involvement grew. He found joy in simple acts, helping with flashcards, learning words alongside his daughter, and observing the subtle improvements in her confidence. The house, once quiet and distant, now resonated with laughter, learning, and connection. He understood that the maid had not just taught his daughter languages. She had taught the entire family the importance of presence, patience, and human connection. He also noticed changes in himself. He became more patient, attentive, and appreciative of the small joys in life. He realized that his wealth had given him comfort but not fulfillment, and now he was learning the value of time, attention, and love. The lessons he received were not in words or techniques but in observation, empathy, and humility. Each day brought a new understanding of what it meant to nurture, to connect, and to believe in someone's potential. By the end of this period, the father had made a silent commitment. He would continue to support his daughter's education, not by controlling it, but by creating an environment where it could flourish. He would provide resources, encouragement, and recognition, allowing the maid to continue guiding his daughter while he learned to be a present and caring parent. He understood that this approach, based on trust, patience, and connection, was more valuable than any formal education or expensive program. The story of transformation was not just about learning languages. It was about bridging gaps, building trust, and embracing the power of human connection. The father saw now that the maid's work was a gift that went far beyond teaching. It was about belief, attention, and love. And as he watched his daughter explore her world with curiosity, confidence, and joy, he knew that the house had begun to feel alive in a way it never had before. The laughter of the daughter echoed through the hallways, a sound so rare and precious that it made the father stop and listen every time. He could not remember the last time he had felt such warmth, such connection within his own home. Each day brought new discoveries, new words, and new interactions that filled him with awe. The maid had become central to this transformation, guiding his daughter with skill, patience, and love. One afternoon, the father made a decision. He wanted to do more than just observe and learn quietly. He wanted to ensure that his daughter received the best possible support, while also recognizing the maid's dedication and talent. He spoke to her privately, expressing his gratitude and asking for her advice on how to expand the lessons. She smiled gently, accepting his appreciation, but reminded him that consistency, patience, and emotional connection were more important than speed or intensity. The father nodded, realizing that he had much to learn not just about education, but about being present, supportive, and attentive. Together, they began planning a more structured approach for his daughter, combining the maid's natural methods with additional resources that could enhance the learning experience. They arranged for books, visual aids, and interactive tools to support the languages she was learning, always keeping the lessons playful and engaging. The father also hired a few specialized tutors to assist, but only under the maid's guidance, ensuring that her unique approach remained central. He had learned that formal programs alone could not replicate the warmth, patience, and intuitive understanding she provided. The daughter's progress was remarkable. She began combining words from different languages in her own sentences, pointing to objects and describing them, singing songs, and even creating simple stories. Her confidence grew with each day, and she started initiating small conversations with her father, something that had previously been nearly impossible. The father was overwhelmed with pride, awe, and gratitude. He realized that the maid had not only taught her languages, but had unlocked the door to communication, connection, and expression. He also noticed changes in himself. He became more patient, attentive, and empathetic. Watching his daughter and the maid interact had taught him the value of presence, listening, and support. He began to appreciate the small victories, the tiny moments of understanding, and the importance of celebrating effort as much as achievement. His perspective on life shifted. He began to see wealth not as an end in itself, but as a tool to create opportunities, support growth, and nurture talent. As weeks passed, the father became more actively involved in his daughter's learning. He would sit on the floor with her, repeating words, helping with exercises, and joining in games that reinforced her lessons. The maid guided him carefully, showing him how to participate without dominating the process, allowing him to build a genuine connection with his daughter. Together, they formed a small team, united by care, dedication, and the shared goal of helping the girl flourish. The daughter thrived in this environment. She began expressing emotions more openly, asking questions and experimenting with new words and phrases. The joy on her face was contagious, and the father felt a deep sense of fulfillment he had never experienced. He realized that this transformation was not just about language, but about confidence, trust, and the power of human connection. The maid's teaching went beyond words. It was about fostering curiosity, independence, and resilience. Encouraged by these results, the father made a bold decision. He wanted to share this story, not for recognition, but to inspire others to value patience, dedication, and the potential in unexpected places. He began documenting his daughter's progress, capturing the milestones, the laughter, and the small victories that marked her journey. He saw that this story could show the world that talent and love could flourish in any setting, regardless of background or status. The maid continued her work with humility, never seeking praise or acknowledgement. She focused entirely on the daughter's growth, adapting lessons to her moods, energy, and interests. The father watched, amazed by her skill, intuition, and dedication. He had never met anyone who could combine knowledge, patience, and emotional intelligence in such a seamless way. Her influence extended beyond teaching. She was shaping a life, creating confidence, and fostering curiosity in ways that could not be measured. At home, the father and daughter's relationship deepened. He found joy in small routines, helping with lessons, celebrating successes, and sharing quiet moments of connection. The daughter's ability to communicate, express herself, and interact with him had grown exponentially. He marveled at the power of patience, love, and belief, and he understood that this transformation had been possible only because of the maid's guidance and their willingness to embrace her methods. The father began to consider the broader impact of this journey. He reflected on how society often overlooks talent, underestimates people, and values status over skill and dedication. The maid's work had proven that greatness could be found in unexpected places, and that the most profound impact often comes from patience, empathy, and genuine care. He felt a responsibility to recognize and support such efforts, not only for his daughter's sake, but as a lesson for himself and others. As the months went by, the daughter's language skills continued to expand. She could now understand and use multiple languages, switch between them effortlessly, and communicate ideas and emotions with clarity. Her progress amazed both her father and the maid. They celebrated each milestone, acknowledging that it was the combination of dedication, trust, and connection that made these achievements possible. The father also noticed subtle changes in his own behavior and mindset. He became more reflective, more patient, and more appreciative of human effort and creativity. He learned to value the unseen, the quiet dedication and the skill that is often hidden behind modest roles or appearances. Watching the maid work had opened his eyes to the power of human potential, and he realized that supporting, nurturing, and believing in others could be more rewarding than any financial achievement. Inspired by the transformation, the father began to think of ways to give back. He explored opportunities to support education and skill development for children and adults who might not have access to resources. He wanted to create programs that recognized talent, patience, and dedication, just as the maid's work had transformed his daughter's life. He understood that wealth could be a tool for change, but only if used wisely and with care. Through all of this, the relationship between the father, daughter, and maid strengthened. The house was filled with laughter, learning, and connection. Each day brought new lessons, new discoveries, and new moments of joy. The daughter's confidence soared, and her ability to communicate and interact with the world grew. The father felt a deep sense of fulfillment, understanding that true wealth was measured not in money but in connection, trust, and the ability to nurture potential. By the end of this chapter in their lives, the father had made a quiet promise to himself. He would continue to support his daughter's education, honor the maid's dedication, and remain present in her life. He had learned that love, patience, and belief could achieve what wealth alone never could. The transformation of his daughter, guided by the maid's skill and care, had also transformed him, teaching him the value of presence, humility, and the power of human connection. Lessons he had learned would shape his life forever. The house was no longer just a mansion filled with possessions. It had become a home alive with laughter, learning, and connection. The father often reflected on the incredible journey they had all been part of, and how much had changed in the past months. His daughter, once quiet and withdrawn, was now full of curiosity, speaking in multiple languages, experimenting with words, and expressing herself with growing confidence. The maid, who had quietly transformed their lives, continued her lessons with humility and dedication, never seeking recognition, but giving her best every single day. The father decided that it was time to formalize some support for his daughter's learning. He arranged for a comfortable study space filled with books, flashcards, and interactive tools, carefully curated to complement the maid's methods. He also ensured that the maid had any resources she needed to enhance her teaching. He understood that while she had already achieved so much with limited materials, giving her the right tools could make her work even more effective. Yet he made it clear that her approach, patience, and intuitive guidance should remain central. No technology or formal program could replace the human touch that had transformed his daughter's world. Days turned into weeks, and the father noticed remarkable improvements. His daughter now confidently combined words and phrases from different languages, creating her own expressions. She laughed as she tried out new sentences, sometimes teaching the maid or her father words she had just discovered. The bond between the three of them grew stronger with each passing day. The father realized that this journey was not just about language learning. It was about trust, patience, and building a life filled with connection and understanding. He also started to see the impact of these lessons beyond the home. The daughter became more comfortable interacting with family, friends, and relatives, her confidence spilling over into social situations. She expressed her feelings more openly and responded to others with warmth and curiosity. The father was amazed to witness how much her world had expanded. He reflected on how the simple, patient, and consistent guidance of the maid had allowed his daughter to flourish in ways he had never imagined. The maid's influence had also changed him deeply. He had learned to value human potential beyond titles, appearances, or social status. He saw the power of dedication, humility, and quiet brilliance. Watching her teach had given him a new perspective on life, teaching him that true impact comes from understanding, empathy, and the ability to nurture others. He began to notice and appreciate the talents of those around him, from household staff to business associates, recognizing that greatness often exists where it is least expected. In the afternoons, They would sit together, the maid leading lessons while the father actively participated. He learned new words alongside his daughter, repeating phrases, playing games, and celebrating every small success. The daughter's eyes would light up when he joined in, thrilled to share what she had learned. It was a beautiful cycle of learning, encouragement, and love. Every day he felt grateful for the opportunity to witness and be part of this growth, understanding that the journey itself was more important than the destination. One evening, the father had a long conversation with the maid. He asked her about her dreams, her aspirations, and her life outside the mansion. She shared that her greatest joy came from helping children discover their potential, but she had never imagined that her work could make such a difference. The father was moved by her humility and dedication. He promised to support her in any way he could, offering opportunities to further her own growth and education. He realized that her success was intertwined with his daughter's progress, and that recognizing her talent was an essential part of honoring the journey they had shared. Inspired by the transformation, the father began thinking about ways to share this story with the world. He wanted others to understand that talent, dedication, and love could change lives, often in unexpected ways. He considered writing about their journey, highlighting the maid's role, and showing that human connection and patience were more powerful than wealth alone. He hoped that by sharing their story, he could inspire others to look beyond appearances, recognize hidden potential, and invest in nurturing talent wherever it is found. Meanwhile, his daughter continued to flourish. She could now engage in conversations using multiple languages, ask questions, describe her feelings, and even create little stories. Her confidence had grown remarkably, and she expressed herself with joy and curiosity. The father felt a deep sense of pride and fulfillment. The maid had not only taught her languages, but had given her the gift of communication, confidence, and connection. The father also noticed subtle changes in his own life. He was more patient, empathetic, and attentive to the needs of others. He valued small victories, celebrated efforts, and appreciated the beauty of dedication and hard work. The lessons he had learned from the maid extended beyond language teaching. They were lessons in humanity, love, and the importance of being present. He realized that wealth could provide comfort and resources, but it was the human touch, care, and attention that truly created transformation. In time, the father formalized a small program in their home to continue supporting his daughter's growth. The maid remained the central figure, guiding lessons and ensuring that learning remained joyful and engaging. Additional resources, tutors, and tools were incorporated under her guidance, enhancing the experience without disrupting the natural, patient approach that had proven so successful. The father was careful to maintain the balance, understanding that the magic lay not in materials or methods alone, but in the bond, trust, and attention that defined their daily routine.